Welcome to our custom space.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel Custom Carving and Epoxy UK. And today's going to be a little bit different. So I've got this giant bear mold that I want to do, but I wanted to do it slightly different. So what I've spent the best part of 4 hours doing is making some resin paper, which Daniel Cooper came up with. So I'm not going to show you how to do that. I think it's only right that you go back and watch his video on how to do that. But it's dead straightforward. Basically, you get UV resin, you get grease-proof paper, or I think you call it parchment paper in the States. You put the UV resin and whatever colorings you want on there, fold it out, flatten it as much as you can, and then put it under a UV light. And then what I've been doing is cutting it into these tiny strips. So I've got 3 different colors that I used, and I'll show you the pictures here. And then I've literally cut it into these tiny strips. And the plan is I'm hoping to, as well as getting the facial effect, get a little bit of texture in the fur. And I'm also going to be using EcoPore in this project. So it's going to be interesting. It's quite a big mold. And I've got some colored UV resins to try out as well. So again, I'm not going to give too much detail in the UV resin, but I do want to emphasize a couple of parts of this mold. So the nose, the eyes, the teeth, and that tongue as well. I want that to all stand out because I think that'll make the whole thing pop. So the first thing I'm going to do, hopefully I've got a black in here for the nose. He hopes. I'm just having a look. And this was just, well, we've got a brown actually, so that might come in useful in a minute. I'm looking for a black and a white, and I'm hoping I get a black and a white. So there we go. That's a black. I'm going to need a red as well for the tongue. So that's red. And then hopefully there's a white in here as well, which there is. So I'm going to, first part of this, I just want to really emphasize those key features on the face. Then the plan is to scatter these shards, I suppose, of a resin paper around to see if that creates a fur-like texture, even though it's a textured mold. And then I'm going to fill the whole thing in with EcoPore. So we're going to see how we get on. So the first thing I want is probably going to be the red, because I want a tiny drop of red in his eyes, because I want this to be quite an angry bear, if that makes sense. And I've not used these coloured UV resins before either, so that on its own is going to be an interesting little test to see if they work. So I'm just going to literally try and put the tiniest of drops in these eyes. And it's not a very dark red, guys. So that's the first thing I'll say. I could probably mix a much darker red myself. But anyway, I've started now, so I'm going to continue. So again, just going to use my UV torch. And now those 2 dots are in the mold. In fact, there's a bubble on there. I don't like bubbles. And I probably shouldn't have done that on the mold. But I'm just going to torch the red with my UV torch so that that cures. Like so. And next I'm going to go around that with a little bit of white, I think. I'm just trying to look at the mold, and obviously I've not used this mold before, so that's what makes it difficult. In fact, I'm going to try and go around that with a little bit of black before the white. And again, I just hope it's a reasonably dark black, if I'm being honest. Otherwise, this isn't going to work very well. I'm just going to go hopefully just around where I've done that red, creating a little bit of a line. Lots of bubbles coming out of these. There we go. So that's almost that second layer. And I can see already it's very, very transparent colours, these. And they probably have to be to cure, in fairness to the manufacturer. But I'm not sure if I'm going to get the desired effects that I want from using them, so we'll find out. And do me a favour, guys, if it's your first time or if you're a regular viewer that hasn't subscribed, just do me a favour and subscribe to the channel. Makes a massive difference. So next I'm going to go in with black for the nose and just try and get it in this nose part. So we've got a nice consistent colour, hopefully for his nose. And you don't get a lot in these coloured UVs either, guys, so just bear that in mind if you're going to buy some. There we go. So that is hopefully just enough to do the first layer of that nose to make it stand out. Again, just going to give it around about 30 seconds with the UV torch. And then I'm going to put another layer on top of this because I want these backs to be covered in it as well. Almost to create those nostrils. But again, it's the first time I've used this mould, so this is all a massive experiment. It might turn out great, it might turn out horrific. We'll just have to wait and see. So that should be the first layer cured. And now, as I say, I want the whole thing covered in this black, so I'm going to go in with another layer. Just around the edge, but actually bring it over those nostrils now as well. Like so. And hopefully that will give us a deep, dark, black nose for this bear. And he does look like quite an aggressive bear. But the key things here is, what are these going to look like once I pour the Eco Pour on? And will they cure for a start? And will I get the desired look that I'm looking for? And will I get a fur-like texture from using this resin paper technique chopped up with a pair of scissors over the course of 4 hours? I hope I get some kind of effect. So there we go. That's his nose. Just giving a little bit of extra care as well to try and make sure that it's cured as well. Because the last thing I want is uncured resin at the bottom of all of this. So I think that's his nose and his eyes. Pretty well done, if you can have a look. Now what I'm going to do is go over the rest of the eye with white and start to put these teeth in white as well, there and there. So I'm going to start off with the eyes and just fill in that sort of eye socket cavity that I've got here, and obviously just cover the rest of the eye as well. And hopefully that will just settle in the right spot and create an eye. Is the hope. And whenever you're doing animals, guys, your eyes are the most important part. So spend a little bit more time. And look at those bubbles. Not happy with that. Just going to get them with my long nose lighter. There we go. And then cure those in, I think, before they go everywhere. But I'm just having a look at them now. Going to get my silicone tool as well. And just make sure they're not going where I don't want them. I want them to be in that socket, really, and just in that socket. But it's a bit difficult when you've not got a completely flat mould, guys. So we'll see how it's going to turn out. Again, this is the white for those eyes. I'm going to use this in the teeth as well. But as I say, it's not a perfectly flat mould, and that's where you find the resin does travel as soon as you put it down. So not sure what it's going to look like in the end. But what I am sure of is we're going to find out. So now for the teeth. And I can see these big fangs. They're the easy ones. Just trying to pop those bubbles. And then there's some small ones here. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm going in these gaps, especially with the big fangs. And then I'm going to go over the back here as well, just to make sure I've got a thin layer across those, what I believe are teeth. And then I'm going to cure it. Now this bottom layer as well, if you can see in the picture. Now these are actually going to be easier because there's a little cavities, which makes it a little bit easier to just fill the cavities, and hopefully we'll get the teeth from that. Like so. And then I'm just having a look, and I think that top one's going to want another layer over it. So I'm going to do that in a second as well. And maybe this bottom layer as well. So just making sure it's cured. And then I'm going to go over with a second layer just to make sure that I get that definition like that. And I don't want it going all over the piece because that's going to ruin the effect. The great thing is with UV though, if it isn't where you want it, move it back, you know, use a wipe and don't cure it unless you're happy with where it is. So that's a bit better. There's still a little bit on there. So again, just use my wipe. I don't want that whiteness to ruin it. I just want it on those teeth. That's better. And then I'm going to keep holding it at an angle and add another layer. I can see those eyes aren't very even as well, so I might add a little tiny bit more to that as well. Next, I'm going to do this tongue, and I want that in a red colour. And then I've got to think about the outskirts of it as well in a minute. So I need my red, which is here, and it's not a very deep red though. That's what worries me with this, and I think I'm going to want it to be quite deep. In fact, that's the brown I just picked up, which I don't want. Here we go, that's the red. So again, in with this red. And again, guys, you don't need these fancy UV coloured UV resins. Just get some clear UV, some mica. Don't do it too thick, or some pigment, and use that. So I'm going to probably use this for the first layer, just because I've got it out. And then the next layer, I'm going to show you what I mean by that, because I actually don't think this is as dark as I want it to be. So I'm just going to do that first layer in this pinkish red all the way around it, because this tongue is probably going to stick out. I'm just trying to make sure there's a reasonably even layer as well before I go any further. And then I'm going to show you what I mean by you don't need these fancy coloured UV resins. So there we go. That's my first sort of layer of pink, I would say, rather than red. But if you haven't got it, guys, just use your plain UV resin and mix it. With whatever colorants you've got, whether it be alcohol ink, whether it be mica powders, whatever you want to do. So again, just to show you that, I mean, I've only used these just as a test because I've just bought them. But it's just as simple. So I've got a little pot here. And for me, it is kind of the right color, but it's not perfect. So I'm just going to pour some UV resin into this pot. Not too much, but enough that I think it's going to cover that tongue, which I think that should do. Have a look. And then it's up to you what you use. I've got some mica powder by the side of me, and I've also got some alcohol ink. So I'm going to mix those together a little bit. Don't be afraid to mix up colours however you want, whether it's mica powders, whether it's alcohol ink. So this is a red mica. I'm just going to add some to the UV resin. Not too much though. Whenever you're adding micas to UV resin, don't add a lot, guys, because if you add a lot, it's got a risk of not curing. And again, I've not even opened this one, so it's a pain to open, especially with gloves on. Those of you that work with micas a lot will know exactly what I mean. It is an absolute pain to open a pot with gloves on when they've got these little paper things on to protect them. And obviously I know why they do it. It is to make sure that it's protected in transit and it doesn't go everywhere. Now this is just because I wanted, as I say, a slightly darker colour. I wanted a deeper, darker red for the tongue rather than being a light pink. So I'm just going to take probably 1/4 of a scoop of this red and add it to that UV resin, like so. Now I still think that's going to be quite a light colour. So I'm going to add some of my red alcohol ink to it as well, just to darken it up a little bit. If he can find the red, that is. That's an orange. There's a magnolia. That's more of a pink, but I think that will work just because I've got it to hand. So 2 drops of magnolia, which is a deep dark pink, and then that red mica in there. Then I'm just going to mix it all together. Make sure you mix it well as well, guys. And that's a much deeper, darker, richer red, like so. I'm just worried that is a little bit too dark. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit more of the UV resin to it as well, just to make sure that it is going to cure. Because there's nothing worse than uncured resin, guys, especially in a piece like this. You're spending a lot of time on it. You want to make sure that your UV resin is going to cure as well as everything else in the project. So there we go. I'm happy with that colour. It's a little bit richer. And I think if I just pour it in and over a thin layer, I think that's going to give me a nice dark, rich red tongue. Hopefully. And again, I'm just spreading this thin layer out over the areas I want covering. Any cleanup I can do in a second. But I just want to make sure that I've got all of this tongue covered. Now let me know what you think in comments, guys. If you think this is going to turn out great, or is it going to turn out a mess? We will find out one way or the other. That's one thing I will tell you. There we go. And I'm going to probably add a second layer in a minute, but that'll do for the first layer. Just going to take off that little bit that's spilt on the side as well, because I don't want it spilling around the sides. And to think this is just stage 1. We've probably got about 4 or 5 stages in this bear head. So I hope you're ready for a longer than normal video. Just whilst I'm doing this as well, guys, just to remind you, membership is also open. It's a great way to support the channel. Costs you less than the price of a cup of coffee nowadays. But it basically means that we can keep investing in the channel and keep growing, hopefully. I'm really planning to keep the channel growing this year. Hopefully get us to that 10,000 subscribers as quickly as possible. I'm going to do a competition as well at 10,000 and just keep trying to do fun projects, you know, something a little bit different, what you might not have seen before, and keep experimenting. That's one of the things I love about resin. It's experimenting, it's about finding new ideas, new projects that haven't necessarily been done before, or adapting ideas like this one with the resin paper to something completely different. And I think that's what's really exciting for me about resin, and that's why it's always going to have a massive future, because there's always going to be something new we can do with it, guys. And that is one of the most exciting things. There's always going to be a new product, a new technique, or something we just haven't seen before, you know. And to be fair, Daniel's come up with a lot of those ideas. So as I say, make sure you follow him. Hopefully I'm coming up with a few ideas as well that you won't have seen as well, and we can all keep learning together. One of the things I love about this resin community, there's none of that, that's my idea, you shouldn't be using it. We all want to help each other grow and each other learn. There we go. So that's that. Just going to cure this layer, and I think it's going to take one more layer, guys, just to completely cover that tongue area. I'm just having a look here as well, because I think it needs a bit more coverage from this top area to this bottom area. There we go. That is the tongue. And who knew it would take so long just to do those elements. So I've got the teeth at the top now, I've got the teeth at the bottom, and I've got the tongue. Now I want to start thinking about the sort of mouth line, and that I want to be a brownish colour, and I've got some brown, so I'm going to try that, see what colour it is, and see if I'm happy with that. And if I am, I'm going to go all the way around the facial features with this brown as well. Again, just to create that, I suppose, another texture or another dimension to it. So let's see what colour it is first before I make that decision. It's quite a light brown, actually. Very light brown. And I think I want a bit more depth. But again, we will see in a minute. It's very, very light, that. So again, I'm not keen on it. And it will do for the first layer. And if you can see there, it's actually blending a little bit with the red, which I don't like. So again, just going to use my tool here and wipe it. I don't want that excess where it's bleeding into each other. And it probably means my red wasn't fully cured in that area. So I'm just going to cure it again. But that is a very, very light brown, guys. So I'm going to go over it with the first layer for that. Just around, as I say, this facial features and the nose. But I do want it to perhaps stand out and pop a little bit more. So again, just going to go around these gums. Just so there's a bit more of a covering. And then up and around the nose as well. Doesn't have to be a thick layer either, guys. Just needs to be enough to cover that sort of gum line and this initial sort of facial features of the nose of the bear. So that has actually used up most of that. So I'm just going to use the silicone tool to spread it around as well, because this I only need to be a thin coat anyway. And so I just want a very thin layer spread all the way around here. It creates almost an extra texture is what I'm looking for. Again, just going round. And you've got to be quite quick with this, guys, because your resin will start to settle. And there we go, I'm getting a bit of pink bleeding there, which I don't want. I'm just going to cure it where it is and then top up any gaps in a second. But again, I'm just hoping that this creates another element to the bear. So now I'm going to go in with the eye sockets as well, because I want that all to sort of all look the same underneath those eyes like that, and then down into the lower layer. And I think this will be using all of my brown UV. So it's, as I say, for me, it's not dark enough anyway, so there's going to be more added to this, but hopefully this is just going to give it an extra shine, is the plan. And you can see why it should cure quite well, because none of these colours are very pigmented. They're not very dark at all. So that's probably why there's no problems with them curing. Personally, I would always risk a little bit more. And in fact, what I am going to do here is I've got some pigment to the side of me, which is a slightly darker colour, which is just called brown. Just going to add a drop or two. This is probably quite risky at this stage, but it was too light for my liking. And if you're not happy with something, change it up, guys, until you are. I think that's a much darker, richer colour already. There we go. I'm hoping this actually adds an extra bit of texture as well. But I'm preferring that as a colour, definitely. And I'm just going to hopefully bring some round and do the same around that mouth. Okay, now for this next layer. Again, I'm just going to use clear with a couple of drops of that pigment I've just used. So I'm going to do a little layer around the mouth, all the way into there and around like that, and then I'm going to mix it in a second. Just with a couple of drops of that dark pigment paste. Again, it is a transparent pigment, so hopefully it should still cure, guys. And it's just brown, this one. 1, 2, 3. One there. One there. I just want this to create, as I say, that darker texture. And then I'm just going to use my tool to spread it around that thin layer and mix it all together to create some dark highlights, hopefully, and some lighter highlights, you know. But again, it's the first time I've used this mold, so this is where, unfortunately, I think we'll find out when we demold. I've completely misjudged where these areas are, and we won't get the effect we want, but we will find out. So here we go. Again, just going around there. And I'm happy that I've got a darker tone of brown. Now, whether I'm happy or not that it's going to cure is another matter. So I'm just going all the way around that edge, making sure that it's all had at least a touch of this darker shade. It's almost like painting with resin, this, guys. There we go. He looks pretty mean. It's interesting. I've got like a bluey glow to this now, which I didn't have before. I don't know where the bluey glows come from. There you go. We might get a glow in the dark element that we didn't plan for, but there we go. That I'm pretty happy will work for the facial features, and just highlight those key areas. Right, now the next bit is I want to get clumps of this, which is basically that resin paper, to create almost fur-like textures before I go in with the Eco-Pour. And the reason I'm laughing is I think this is going to be the most tedious part of the process. So what I might do for you guys is speed this up. But do me a favor, guys, like and subscribe to the channel. I'll say it makes a huge difference. And as you can see, this is just those different colors now. And part of me is wondering if I should just do a thin layer of resin rather than the UV. But I've got the UV out anyway. Or should I just put it in and then pour the Eco-Pour directly over it? This is the bit I'm unsure of at the moment. And you can see, I don't know if they're even going to stick to the mold, guys. But I think they should. And you can see those different shades, which is good. I'm just hoping I've got enough to completely almost cover these areas. And this is just that resin paper. And then the plan is to mix up some Eco-Pour, but again, to put some of those darker pigments in. I don't know if this is going to work or not. I'm thinking if I pour the Eco-Pour over it, it should still pretty much stay in place. And I'm hoping because of the shape of the mold, it's still going to keep that fur texture underneath as well. But I'm hoping that this just gives it another element of texture. As you can see, I've got those 3 different shades, and I spent the best part of 4 hours chopping it up. But this is just resin, guys. This is just UV resin, thin strips, I say, made into that resin paper and then chopped up. But the other reason I want to use the Eco-Pour as well, guys, is it cures within like an hour. And I think this is going to create, hopefully, an interesting effect. Or an interesting texture. The only thing I'm thinking here is, should I go over it first with some resin to give it a glossier finish, or do I do that as a top coat afterwards? But I'm pretty happy that that's just about enough to cover it, and that was about 3 sheets of the resin paper I used. And now it's just deciding. I might go in with a thin layer of resin all the way around this first, and then go on top with that EcoPore. So just so I know that there's going to be an element of glossiness to the front, because I prefer glossy resin rather than matte. Take this off the tongue. So yes, I think I'm going to mix up, not a lot, probably 4 ounces of resin, just to go over it all and sort of secure that in before I go on top with the EcoPore. So give me 5 minutes to mix up 4 ounces of resin. Then I'm going to, as I say, pour that over, and then we'll come back in with the EcoPore, which I think I'm going to need about 10 to 15 ounces of. So we'll see in a second. So see you guys in a sec. Hey guys, so I'm back and the resin is in the debubbler, and I just wanted to show you, this is the EcoPore I'm going to be using. I get it from Just For You Online, UK.com, so Just For You Online UK.com. Great pair of people over there that are running that company, and I really love this EcoPore product. So if you want to get yourself some of that, get onto their website and put in the discount code CCUK, and that's going to get you a discount. So I'm going to mix some of that up at the same time, and then I'm going to pour both almost simultaneously. So that thin layer of resin to cover the front, some EcoPore straight on top of that, and then I'm probably going to mix up a tiny bit of resin on the back to almost fully encase this EcoPore. So we'll see how we get on. I'll see you in a second. So here we go, guys. This is that EcoPore, and all I've done is meant to be 3 parts water to 10 parts EcoPore. And if I'm being honest, I'm normally quite liberal, and I just mix in what I think I'm going to need, and it's normally quite forgiving. That to me is a little bit too thick, so I'm going to just add a tiny bit more water to it. But you do want it like a paste-like consistency. You're probably better off with a huge bowl and a whisk, but I don't have one of those to hand, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit more water, and I'll be straight back. Now, when you're mixing it as well, guys, make sure you mix it thoroughly, so you've not got any loose bits of powder on the bottom of your cup, and just really give it a good stir, because you want to make sure it's all mixed in together. Now, I actually want to tint this as well, so it goes slightly darker rather than the white. And as I say, this shouldn't theoretically work, because you're technically mixing a water-based product with resin, but it worked for me last time when I did that huge seal. So I'm hoping it's going to work with this bear. So we're going to find out. I'm going to add some drops of the same brown pigment to this. So I'm going to start off with about 5 or 6, because you tend to find that because it's so white, it lightens any colour. So I'm going to, in fact, quite a bit in there. There we go. And as you can see, it's no precise measurements, but hopefully it's, again, even that much pigment, look, it doesn't really change the colour that much. But it has changed it a little bit, but not quite enough. So I am going to add some more, just because I want it to at least look like a nice light brown colour. And this is quite a lot of pigment, but I want that colour. To be at least a little bit dark. And what I might do as well is add a tiny bit of mica to this. I'm just looking around if I've got one that's the right colour. I probably haven't. So again, I'm just going to keep on persisting, adding some more. But as you can see, it takes an awful lot of pigment to colour this. That looks pretty cool like that, but ultimately if I could get anywhere near that colour I'd be quite happy. Just going to let it sit for a second. Then I might actually add some alcohol ink to it as well, so bear me a second. So I'm back, guys, and I've just got some coffee alcohol ink, which again is a nice brown colour. I'm going to put a decent amount in, as I say, because I want this to be darker than what it is in order for this to work. But I'm going to keep that out because I'm probably going to need some of that with the resin as well in a minute. But again, it's because it's a white-based product. It takes an awful lot of colour even to tint it. But actually, I think when that dries, that'll give quite a cool effect. And obviously, most of the colour I still think is going to be from the resin. And obviously, we've got all of these bits of resin as well, which is going to add colour. So I just wanted it to have a few dark tones. So that's that. I'm going to leave this to one side now to just hopefully continue thickening up. But you can see it doesn't properly mix into the Eco Pour, but it has darkened it a little from where it was. So just leaving that to one side, grabbing the resin. There we go. But again, I want this to be quite dark, guys, so I'm going to pretty much do the same. Add some of that resin pigment and some of the coffee alcohol ink. And hopefully we'll get a nice dark, rich, sort of browny coloured, still semi-transparent though, resin. That's what I want. Beautiful. Almost like a deep molasses colour, that. But it's still transparent because I've used transparent pigments and I've used that alcohol ink. So pretty happy with that as a colour. Just going to mix it around a few more times. And then we're going to pour, you know. Resin will do what resin wants to do. So it's just a case of pouring and seeing what results resin wants to give you. As soon as you give into that, you'll know what resin art really is. And sometimes it's a case of combining different things, different colours, and just hoping for the best. So I'm happy with that colour. So I want it to be quite glossy, and that's why I'm just going to go around everywhere. To secure in those bits that I've done. So just a very thin layer now, going around the whole piece almost. And I'm doing this mainly to secure in that resin paper that I've created, but also just to create that first layer before I add the Eco Pour on. And again, it's just a thin layer going all the way, hopefully securing that resin paper in the places I've put it, and hopefully giving me a bit of a backing for the rest of the piece. So that is probably about 2 ounces I've poured now, no more. That is just about 2 ounces worth of that resin. Lovely rich colour, but still transparent, and I think that's going to be the key here to getting the effect. So that's that. Now call me crazy, because this is the crazy part. In with the Eco Pour, which pretty much only takes an hour to cure, guys. And again, I'm going all the way around, so it is mixing completely with that resin. And the bulk of this, as I say, is going to be filled with Eco Pour. And actually, I could have probably done a tiny bit more looking at this. But I'm not. I'm going to top it up with resin. Pour in what I've got left and then make a judgment. Personally, I think it's going to take about another 5 ounces of resin to get this completely covered. So I'm just going to mix up another 5 ounces of resin and I'll be right back. So we're back, guys, and I'm actually mixing up about another 400 ml of resin. I just want to make sure that this is enough to completely cover it, and then I haven't got to worry about anything until tomorrow. when it comes to uncuring it. So again, adding the same pigments. So I've got this honey, dark honey brown, and then some coffee alcohol ink. And then I'm just going to mix it around for a couple of minutes and pour it all in. I'm not going to put it back through the debubbler. I don't think there's any point at this point because this is really just going to create that back. So I don't think there's any need, as long as I'm mixing it slow enough, to put it back through that debubbler. And look at how dark that looks in the pot. But actually, as soon as you take it out, you see how translucent it actually is. Again, just mixing it all the way around, scraping the cup, scraping the bottom, because the last thing I want is any unmixed resin in this. And I'm hoping that this should be enough to just top it up. And we should get hopefully a cool effect with that eco pour in there, as well as the resin paper, as well as the UV design. But who knows? You never know until you demold at the end of the day. And I've had a few messages from people that are getting a bit deflated with different sort of resin projects that they're trying. Keep at it, guys, you know, because it's just one of those things. Nobody gets it right all the time. And actually, the more you do, the better you're going to get. And once you get a piece that you're really proud of, it spurs you on to carry on. And no matter how long you've done it, trust me, all of the big artists, Daniel Cooper, Steve McDonald, Julie Kurtz pouring your heart out, Claire as well from Claire's Crafty Corner. We all make mistakes as well as you guys. We're only human. There's no resin artist out there that will get it right 100% of the time. So just keep at it until you get a piece that you're really happy with, and that will keep you going. I think I've judged this about right with this resin as well. And that is pretty much full to the brim. So hopefully I'm going to get a dark brown resiny eco pour bear with that resin paper, hopefully creating some form of fur-like texture. I don't think it will fully look like fur, but I think it will look pretty cool, hopefully. And I'm just noticing there, look, this mould is not fully level because my table is. So all I'm going to do is try and lift it a little on these sticks and tilt it backwards almost, because I know that my table is level. So that tells me that this mould isn't. And hopefully that's just enough now to keep the resin in, because it's now broken that surface tension. Nothing worse than an unlevel mould, and I've had a few, to be fair. That is the risk you take when you're ordering from places like Temu, guys, is they often aren't level like they should be. There we go, so that's slightly lifted now. Just having a look, see if that's, because what I don't want to happen is all that resin that I've just mixed to pour out. All right, last bit in here. And I'm just going to go around these edges to make sure that this fur is completely filled up to the edge. Like so. Again, without trying to disturb the resin paper fur underneath. And I'm hoping that we're going to have a nice piece. We will know tomorrow, one way or the other, guys. And now it's just the joys of cleanup. Which, if you're like me, is the worst bit of working with resin. You hate cleaning up. Just going to go around these edges again. Trying to re-establish that surface tension, stop any more resin coming out. And it's just this back corner. Doesn't seem very even. But there we go. That is pretty much it. I'm pretty confident that the alcohol in it should have sank now. So I am going to just quickly go over it with my torch to get rid of any bubbles. And I'll come back in about 5 minutes and do the same again, just to make sure any bubbles are gone. But I'm hoping that we get a really rich dark colour from this. So I'll see you guys tomorrow for demold of this giant bear's head. I hope you're as excited as me. So here we go, guys. It is the next day and I'm excited to demold this. Don't know what it's going to look like. And it's probably one of my biggest, heaviest pieces, to be fair. So I'm just going to do what I normally do and go around the edges first. It's a big old mould though, this, and I don't know what it will have come out like, if I've got any of the effects I wanted or not. I'm just hoping I have, so it doesn't waste all of that resin, EcoPore and UV resin, but it's coming out pretty easily, which is great. Nope. Some of the UV resin hasn't cured. As you can see, still in there, still a little bit thick, and it's such a shame because actually parts of it look really cool. The EcoPores come through okay. Now again, I'm just having a look now, and even if I cure that now, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to fix it without putting another coat of resin over it. And to be fair, the resin paper that I used, it's not really that visible. It is in some places, specifically where the EcoPore is. But I'm going to have a think about how to fix this, and we'll come back on another video on how to fix it. I love the brown edges. So the colour was right. Maybe not using the EcoPore on it, although it could be a cross between a grizzly and a polar bear. But I'm going to have a think about how I can fix this now. So I'll see you guys on a future video.
Welcome to our custom space where dreams take flight. A party visions come to life. It's a perfect sight. We born together, blooming three, resin family. Testing my God's new creations. We set the free. Join our journey, like and subscribe. This is our place. Ocean seas to dragons and blooms. We carve with